Konnichiwa, bakusei-tachi. I am Puppy-sensei, the puppy girl Japanese teacher VTuber who makes Japanese language content to help you level up your abilities. It's 2026, and it's time to get back on track. This week, we're going to be talking about Godan verbs. In modern Japanese, all verbs basically fall into one of three categories: Ichidan verbs, Godan verbs, and irregular verbs. Now, why did I say in modern Japanese? Because actually in pre-modern Japanese, around the time of the Heian period and other times in Japanese history, there were additional categories of verbs, such as Nidan verbs that don't exist anymore. Today, we are just honing in specifically on Godan verbs, and we're going to talk about those a little bit. However, to understand first why we call these Godan verbs, we need to understand exactly what's happening when we conjugate a verb in Japanese. Taberu is a verb that I have come back to again and again and again in a lot of my videos, mostly because I find it to be very emblematic of an Ichidan verb. So if this is an Ichidan verb, taberu, we can see the conjugation pattern here. Taberu becomes tabemasu in the polite form. Taberu would be tabeta in the plain past form. So it's past tense, tabeta. And then past tense polite would be tabemashita, right? That's what we're seeing here. Okay, so I now want to take this very emblematic Ichidan verb and I would like to compare it to a Godan verb so we can really illustrate the difference between the two. So naturally, we're going to pair taberu, which means to eat, with nomu, which means to drink. Nomu is a Godan verb, although in my opinion, it's a little difficult to say that nomu is an emblematic Godan verb. I'll try to explain why that is as we continue this lesson, but I really think that we're going to hone in on that idea in the next lesson. The important point that I do want to cover here is the final syllable in these Godan verbs. When conjugating any verb in Japanese, we're generally going to make a change to the final sound of the verb. That is, namely, the sound that ends in the u vowel, while that verb is in the dictionary form, right? Just like taberu, right, ends in an u sound, nomu ends in an u sound. When we conjugate, we want to hone in on that last syllable and we're going to do something, right? So let's get our terms super clear here. When we refer to a Japanese verb as dictionary form, what we're really talking about is the plain non-past form. That is the casual, or the form that you would use when you're talking to your friends, non-past. This is the form of the verb that ends in some kind of u sound. For any Ichidan verb, that final hiragana will be ru. Okay? Let me say that one more time. If the verb is Ichidan, it definitely ends in ru. That does not mean that every verb that ends in ru is an Ichidan verb. But if it is an Ichidan verb, it ends in ru, ru, okay? For a Godan verb, on the other hand, the final sound can be ru in certain circumstances, but additionally, it could be u, bu, mu, su, ku, gu, or nu. Note here that I'm saying both Ichidan and Godan verbs can end in a ru sound, but like I said before, Ichidan verbs always end in ru. Again, I'm going to explain this further in an additional lesson, but there you go. Alright, so for an Ichidan verb like taberu, the process of conjugation really just involves dropping the ru sound and then replacing it with mas, ta, or mashita depending on the tense and register or politeness. This pretty much holds true for all forms of all Ichidan verbs. They're fairly standard. We drop the ru and then we add some additional information and an additional form. Unfortunately, Godan verbs are just a little bit more complicated. With a Godan verb, you're generally going to have to change the vowel sound for the final hiragana of the verb in question. Look what happens to nomu in the polite form. It becomes nomimasu. Nomu becomes nomimasu. The mu sound is becoming a mi sound. And then we're adding the polite modifier mas. This is going to hold true for the polite past. We're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to convert the mu in nomu to a mi sound, and then we're going to add mashita to create the polite past form, right? So nomu, that's the dictionary form. Nomimasu, that is the non-past polite form. And nomimashita, that is the polite past. Okay. However, now we really need to absolutely zoom in on the plain past form of nomu, which is nonda. Because this pattern is a little bit different when we try to go about swapping between the dictionary form, or the casual non-past, right, and the plain past form of the Godan verb. Generally speaking, all verbs in the plain past are going to end either with a ta sound or a da sound. Now, let's not get ahead of ourselves, but that's what we're seeing here, okay? However, getting to that ta or da sound isn't particularly straightforward in all cases. Remember, Godan verbs are so called because they basically have 5 different forms that will evoke 5 different vowel sounds on that syllable, that conjugating syllable. In practice, that kind of looks like this. This is the verb nomu, right? Again, I said that means to drink, and I'm showing you the dictionary, polite, negative, potential, and presumptive forms of that same verb. Can you see how we're creating 5 different conjugations for nomu, and that they span all the possible Japanese vowel sounds? Nomanai means do not drink. Nomimasu is polite form. Nomu is the dictionary form. Nomeru is the potential form, able to do, right? That means to be able to drink. Nomeru. And nomo is the let's drink presumptive form. It says let's do this together. That's one of the uses of this. Okay? So we have a, I, u, e, o, right? Here, ma, mi, mu, me, mo. We've got all 5 vowel sounds, and they're being used in the conjugation of this nomu verb. And that'll be the case for almost all Godan verbs. So, what's going on with nonda, then? The casual past form of a Godan verb looks a little different than we might expect. We would actually kind of expect it to maintain the same oo sound. That's what happens with the polite forms, right? Do you see that here? The mi sound in nomimasu is the same mi sound as nomimashita. It isn't changing. Both of these are the past, and we would expect them to stay the same, and that's exactly what they do. Nomimasu, nomimashita. Both of these have this e sound. So, why is there this strange sound change happening between nomu and nonda? Well, it's not. It isn't. And no, I'm not gaslighting you. This actually isn't exactly different. The problem is that if we left well enough alone and tried to create a form like nomuta, nomuta. And if we said nomuta is the past tense form of nomu, it sounds wrong. It's hard to say, nomuta, nomuta. And you would find that if you said it over and over and over again, nomuta, 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 nomta, nonda, 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 right? Eventually, the sound over time just sort of naturally progresses until we end up on nonda because it's easier to say. Nonda, nonda, I drank, past tense. If all Godan verbs ended in a mu sound, like nomu, then we could collectively nod our heads and we could be relatively happy that we have understood how the conjugation of Godan verbs works, right? We would say, ah, any Godan verb that ends in mu is going to follow this same pattern, right? So go from nomu to nomimash to nomimashita to nonda, right? That would be all of the patterns. And if there were only mu Godan verbs, if they all ended in mu, then our job is done, right? But that's not the way it is. It's not the way it is, unfortunately. And that's because there are lots of other Godan verbs that end in those other sounds, like I told you before, like nu and bu, and even just u. And we have to learn how to deal with those too. So let's come back to this next time and we're going to talk more about it. So that's all for today. Check me out next week around Wednesday, I hope, and we will talk more about the conjugation of Godan verbs. Thank you for your time. You're all getting a gold star for the day. I'll see you soon. Mata raishu!